I'm with Medical Murray, based in Chicago. I'm going to be presenting on finding the right partner for your medical device company. To start, I've been in the medical device industry for many years. I've worked at both large and small companies. Here's a sampling of some of the companies I've worked for over the years. Most recently, for the last year, I've worked at Altura Medical before I recently joined Medical Murray. Altura Medical is a AAA stent graft company with a lot of challenges and really feeds into the topics I'll be discussing. The challenges that I've seen faced by both small and large medical companies are pretty much the same. One of the critical needs is to address aggressive timelines. I think everyone here has experienced that. Resource constraints, especially in those smaller companies, the people, the dollar availability, the equipment space. Technical issues, unfortunately, always come up, especially with some of the high-tech products I've worked on. Capturing intellectual property is an important thing to keep your eye on and to make sure is at the forefront of your decision making. Meeting regulatory standards is continuing to be a challenge as those needs continue to change. And having the proper independent testing, noting when those are needed, is also critical. So I'll be covering these 6 topics through this presentation. So to start, before I get into those topics, what do I look for in a critical partner? What is some of the key things to consider? One is resources. What resources do they bring to the table? The company that you partner with should be an extension of your own company. It also should be able to grow with your company. As your needs change, they should be able to address those growing needs. Communication is critical in-house, but it's also critical with your partner you're working with. Are they able and willing to discuss issues in a timely manner? Do they hide things or do they bring them to the forefront? And are they honest? Do they give honest feedback? Do they really tell you what's happening in an honest way? And then lastly, a partner needs to be able to bring quality results. That's the end of the end need is documentation, control, the ability to be able to repeat things as things move forward, to be able to have those necessary controls. So the first topic is time constraints. How do you as a company overcome time constraints and recognize the timing needs, and how does a partner bring support to that? First, in understanding what your timing needs are, it's important to have a realistic timeline. And that comes from experience, previous projects in your company, your own personal experience. Also looking at the different considerations of your project. What are the prototyping expectations? How many cycles are needed? Often a difficult question to answer. What is your vendor turn time? How quickly can they respond? Documentation requirements, testing needs. Unfortunately, some of the testing for medical devices are pretty long term. It's important to recognize what is the timing for each of those. And then also project creep. It's something that often happens, and it's important to recognize what your critical requirements are up front and try to minimize that project creep. It can derail a project very quickly. So things a partner should bring are the recent and relevant experience. They should be bringing to the table a know-how and an experience that's most recent and hopefully more recent than your own. They should bring the bandwidth and the in-house staff to be able to move things quickly. And again, communication, you'll see I point that out often, it's a key requirement. So overcoming the time constraints, it's important to get a project plan in place. It's important to have it written down, to get agreement with your partner as well, to recognize that they can help you validate that plan. So internally and externally, that plan needs to be validated. Obstacles should be recognized up front. And again, that's something your partner should be able to bring to the table. They should help you be able to recognize the obstacles and help you come up with a game plan. Milestones are needed along the way. It's important to track your progress and to have those milestones. And lastly, communicating the plan is critical, both internally and also with your external partners. The second topic is resource constraints. Again, working with startups, I understand the challenges of budgets and the limited financing that often is there to support. Hiring is the second big issue with resource constraints. Oftentimes you need specific skills and you can't hire them fast enough or train them fast enough, and bringing them on for a long-term hire isn't often the answer. Breadth of knowledge, understanding where your limitations are within your company is important on breadth of knowledge as well. Space and equipment are also two key critical resource limitations that are often in place. The partner should be able to address all of these as best as they can. Skilled resources, they should be bringing those to the table. Reduced labor cost is something preferably that would come with your partner, especially out here in California, things are very expensive. So perhaps something overseas or in a different locale. And the necessary equipment and tools is something else a partner should be able to bring to the table. When we look at resource constraints, people is really the key item to be considering. It's important to look at what are your needs, what are the people that partner brings. Do they have the right skill sets from engineering? Do they have the specialties that you may need with fluid dynamics or with finite element analysis? Do they have the quality skills and capabilities to bring to the table? And for manufacturing, are they able to grow with you and meet your longer term needs, and both with pilot or full scale? And so here's a list to consider, especially my experience in a lot of complex catheters. What is it that you're needing your partner to bring to the table? They may have a need, they may be able to fill an immediate need, but you also should look at, can they fill some longer term needs for unexpected changes that may come up? And then other needs, do they fill those with things like machine shops, 3D modeling, and so forth? There's several stages that may be needed to be addressed as you go into full-scale production. I also look at a partner and can they bring those longer-term full-scale needs to the table. Some recent experience I've had has been in bringing a product into a pilot production facility and recognizing that is only the first step of the need. The ability to take that product to packaging, sterilization, and then even into distribution needs to be considered. So do look at those aspects as well. The third topic is resolving technical issues. Again, unfortunately, they come up. It's important to keep in mind what you want to keep in-house. Where are your in-house skills? What do you want your internal focus to be? From my experience, looking at what your core competency is, where you have that focus, and looking at whether you have the skills in-house to manage that, or whether you need to go to an outside partner and bring in that relevant experience. And it's also important to challenge your partner to make sure they're going to be able to close the issue. Just being able to overcome some of the technical needs isn't often enough. It's important to be able to close the issue as well. So in looking at the technical issues, understanding what is the focus of your partner. Are they implant focused? Are they delivery system? Are they able to deal with complexities, or are they more of the simple? And how deep do their capabilities go? How many of the stages of your product life cycle are they able to support? As I've worked in some of the implants, it's also very critical to recognize that there are severe regulatory considerations as well as the long-term testing. A change late in the game on an implant can be catastrophic to the timeline, and it's important to take those into account ahead of time. As we look at complex catheters, it's also important to recognize that the breadth of the partner is also important. In recent experience that I've had with some what appeared to be initially some simple catheter constructs with a Teflon liner, a braid, I ran into some challenges that the partner, fortunately we chose wisely, and they were able to keep up with us and really push the limits. So do recognize that catheter complexity can grow on you, and catheters are also critical for final product performance. So don't underestimate the importance of catheter design. Technical experience is also critical. Does your partner have the experience in the right locale within the body? Do they have coronary or endovascular? They may have the ability to create components, but oftentimes you want to be able to go beyond that as time continues, to go into sub-assemblies and even into final assemblies. And I've had experiences with component assemblers that have taken it further, and that's an important thing to consider. And then also, what materials are you working with? Are you working with bioabsorbables? Are you working with polymers? Do keep in mind that not all partners are able to deal in all the different types of materials. So do look at what range of material requirements you have. The fourth topic is capturing intellectual property. It's one that's critical in a startup. It's also important for a large company. There is an ability to to have an offense and also a defense with your IP, and recognizing that early on, documenting things appropriately along the way are critical. Out-of-box thinking can be challenging to do. Brainstorming and working with a partner, though, can help get technology from a Me Too to a proprietary technology, or hopefully a filing and a patent. And one of the things I would stress is do look at a partner for being able to build your own internal intellectual property. That's something that needs to be vetted up front. The clear ownership of IP is critical. It's not always the case that you will own it at the end. So do look at that up front and make sure you've thought it through. Meeting regulatory standards is becoming more and more challenging. There's a lot of topics going on here today and at a lot of the conferences that Europe is becoming more increasingly enforcing of the standards. Things like the lure testing that historically has been a sort of hit and miss whether it's required is now more increasingly required. US standards have always been high and they continue to be high, and proper documentation is critical. This is an area that I've experienced where a partner brings a lot to the table. I try to pick all the partners I work with as being ISO certified, also FDA registered, and I also look that they have a quality system that's maintained and audited externally, as well as I'll often go and audit different companies I work with as well. And then also critically for meeting of regulatory standards is we look for all of our it's always important to look for vendors and partners that have maintained traceability and also that are able to certify at the end of the day. Even during the early stages of a project, this is an important one to keep in mind. And then last but not least is device testing. Device testing has a lot of reasons from a marketing standpoint, from a regulatory filing standpoint. It's important to understand what your intent of the data is and whether you need an independent laboratory to create your data. Independent laboratory testing is critical for a lot of the regulatory filings to look at competitive analysis. Also, the equipment and tooling needs can be pretty complex and costly, and whether you invest in those internally or not is a question. And then recognizing that standards have complexity to them and maintaining compliance to standards is important and is something that needs to be considered. And again, this is where a partner can bring a lot to the table. The experience and skills that they bring to the table, along with the ability to have documentation, is critical, and them having the proper tools and the proper equipment is also critical. So in summary, things I would stress for picking the right partner would be to look at the people. Who are the people in the company that you're looking to partner with? What track record experiences do they have? And what scope and breadth of work are they able to bring to the table? And don't underestimate the importance of closing a deal. As a proposal comes in from a partner, look at it for the insightfulness that they bring, look at it for the completeness that they are able to bring to the table. Also, as there's questions and ambiguities within a proposal, do question those and get clarity And then lastly, if changes happen, how are those going to be addressed, and make sure that's covered within an agreement as well. And then lastly, regular communication is critical. Insist on it, weekly meetings, insist on feedback as problems occur or as things are progressing. So I've been with the medical device industry designing products, working with startups for the last 20 years, and most recently I'm excited to say I've been able to join Medical Murray. We're a contract manufacturer as well as designer. It's a family-owned business that I've been able to now join full-time. We've been in business for 18 years. We have our offices in Chicago, Illinois, and we recently added a manufacturing facility in 2008. We opened up a Charlotte office in North Carolina in 2012, and I'm excited to say I'm opening up an office in California here in 2014. So our focus has been on medical device design. We focus on unique processes materials, as well as complex catheters and implants. So I open it up to any questions you have, and would be happy to answer those now.